Good morning, third grade. I'm running really behind today. I overslept. We are on chapter 8, Flight of the Fat Lady, which is also a really good chapter. It's kind of long and drawn out in the book, and in the movie it goes by really fast. Remember that I said the movie is very different from this book. A lot of things. I got my coffee. I'm ready to go. I got no choice. I got people on my tail today. So already this morning I got a bunch of emails. Hurry up, hurry up. So this one can't be too long. I hope your guys' Fridays are much more relaxed and that you're ready for the weekend. I hope that your weekend is going to look a little bit different than your weekdays. Hopefully. I know mine isn't. Chapter 8. In no time at all, Defense Against the Dark Arts had become most people's favorite class. Only Draco Malfoy and his gang of close Slytherins had anything bad to say about Professor Lupin. "Look at the state of his robes," Malfoy would say in a loud whisper as Professor Lupin passed by. "He dresses like our old house elf." Pause. Their old house elf is Dobby? Remember from the second book? Alright, play. But no one else cared that Professor Lupin's robes were patched and frayed. His next few lessons were just as interesting as his first. After Boggarts, they studied redcaps, nasty little goblin-like creatures that lurked wherever there had been bloodshed, in the dungeons of castles and the potholes of deserted battlefields, waiting to bludgeon those who had gotten lost. Ooh, they sound awful. From redcaps, they moved on to kappas, creepy water dwellers that looked like scaly monkeys with webbed hands itching to strangle unwitting waders in their ponds. Harry only wished he was as happy with some of his other classes. Worst of all was potions. Snape was in a particularly vindictive mood these days, and no one was in any doubt of why. The story of the boggart assuming Snape's shape, and the way that Neville had dressed it in his grandmother's clothes, had traveled throughout the castle like wildfire. I'm sure that's a good rumor. Snape didn't seem to find it funny at all. His eyes flashed menacingly at the very mention of Professor Lupin's name. And he was bullying Neville worse than ever. Harry was also growing to dread the hours spent in Professor Trelawney's stifling tower room, deciphering lopsided shapes and symbols, trying to ignore the way Professor Trelawney's enormous eyes filled with tears every time she looked at Harry. He couldn't like Professor Trelawney, even though she was treated with respect, bordering reverence, which means they think of her as like this almighty figure, like, "Oh, Professor Trelawney." He couldn't like Professor Trelawney, even though she was treated with respect, bordering on reverence, by many of the class. Parvati Patil and Lavender Brown had taken to haunting Professor Trelawney's tower room at lunchtimes, and always returned with annoyingly superior looks on their faces, as they knew things the others didn't. They had also started using hushed voices whenever they spoke to Harry, as though he was on his deathbed. Nobody really liked Care of Magical Creatures, which, after the action-packed first class, had become extremely dull. Hagrid seemed to have lost his confidence. They were now spending lesson after lesson learning how to look after flobberworms, which had to be some of the most boring creatures in magical existence. "Why would anyone bother to look after them?" said Ron, after he had another hour of poking shredded lettuce down a flobberworm's tiny throat. After the start of October, however, Harry had something else to occupy him. Something so enjoyable that it made up for all of his unsatisfactory or not up to par classes. The Quidditch season was approaching, and Oliver Wood, captain of the Gryffindor team, called a meeting one Thursday evening to discuss tactics for the new season. There were 7 people on a Quidditch team, 3 chasers, whose job it was to score a goal by putting the quaffle, a red soccer ball-sized ball, through one of the 50-foot-high hoops at the end of each pitch. 2 beaters who were equipped, or were given, heavy bats to repel bludgers which are two heavy black balls that zoom around trying to attack players, a keeper who defends the goalpost, and a seeker who has the hardest job of all, the job of catching the golden snitch. A tiny winged walnut-sized ball whose capture ends the game and earns the seeker's team an extra 150 points. Oliver Wood was a burly 17-year-old, now in his 7th and final year at Hogwarts. There was quite a sort of desperation in his voice as he addressed his 6 fellow team members in the chilly changing rooms on the edge of the dark Quidditch pitch. "This is our last chance, my last chance to win the Quidditch Cup," he told them, striding up and down in front of them. "I'll be leaving at the end of this year. I'll never get another shot at it. Gryffindors haven't won for 7 years now, okay? So we've had the worst luck in the world. Injuries, then the tournament getting called off last year," Wood swallowed, as though the memory of this What are you What? Clayton, why are you interrupting the read aloud? I know, but you're interrupting. Aiden, are you tapping your foot? Aiden S., could you stop tapping your foot? Okay, he's going to stop tapping his foot. Can you focus now? All right, good. You please don't interrupt. All right, thank you. "But we also know we've got the best ruddy team in the school," he said, punching a fist into his other hand, the old manic glint back in his eye. "We've got 3 superb chasers." Wood pointed at Alicia Spinett, Angelina Johnson, and Katie Bell. "Stop it, Oliver, you're embarrassing us," said Fred and George together. After Oliver Wood said, "We've got 2 unbeatable beaters. And we've got a seeker who has never failed to win us a match," Wood rumbled, glaring at Harry in kind of a furious pride. "And me," he added as an afterthought. "We think you're pretty good too, Oliver," said George. "Cracking keeper," said Fred. "The point is," Wood went on, resuming his pacing, "the Quidditch Cup should have had our name on it these last 2 years, ever since Harry joined the team. I thought the thing was in the bag, but we haven't got it, and this year's the last chance we'll get to finally get our name on that thing." Wood spoke so dejectedly that even Fred and George looked sympathetic. "Oliver, this year's our year," said Fred. "We'll do it, Oliver," said Angelina. "Definitely," said Harry. Full of determination, the team started training sessions 3 evenings a week. The weather was getting colder and wetter, the nights darker, but no amount of mud, wind, or rain could tarnish Harry's wonderful vision of finally winning the huge silver Quidditch Cup. Harry returned to the Gryffindor common room one evening after training, cold and stiff, but pleased with the way practice had gone to find the room buzzing excitingly. "What's happened?" he asked Ron and Hermione, who were sitting in 2 of the best chairs by the fireside and contemplating some star charts for astronomy. "It's the first Hogsmeade weekend," said Ron, pointing to a notice that had appeared on the battered old notice board. End of October, on Halloween." "Excellent," said Fred, who had followed Harry through the portrait hole. "I need to visit Zonko's joke shop. I'm nearly out of stink pellets." Harry threw himself into a chair beside Ron, his high spirits ebbing away, or declining, going away. His high spirits getting lower and lower. They're ebbing away. Hermione seemed to read his mind. "Hey, Harry, I'm sure you'll be able to go next time," she said. "They're bound to catch Sirius Black soon. He's been sighted once already." "Black's not fool enough to try anything in Hogsmeade," said Ron. "Ask McGonagall if you can go this time, Harry. The next one might not be for ages." "Ron," said Hermione, "Harry's supposed to stay in school." "He can't be the only 3rd year left behind," said Ron. "Ask McGonagall, Harry. Go on." "Yeah, I think I will," said Harry, making up his mind. Hermione opened her mouth to argue, but at that moment Crookshanks leapt lightly into her lap. A large dead spider was dangling from his mouth. "Does he have to eat that thing in front of us?" said Ron, scowling. "Clever Crookshanks, did you catch that spider all by yourself?" said Hermione. Crookshanks slowly chewed up the spider, his yellow eyes fixed on Ron. "Just keep him over there, that's all," Ron said irritably, tucking back into a star chart. "I've got Scabbers asleep in my bag." Harry yawned. He really wanted to go to bed, but he still had his own star chart to complete. He pulled his bag towards him, took out the parchment, ink, and quill, and started to work. "You can copy mine if you want to," said Ron, labeling his last star with a flourish and shoving the chart towards Harry. Hermione, who disapproved of any kind of copying or cheating, pursed her lips, which means she pressed them together really tight, like she was not happy, but didn't say anything. Crookshanks was still staring unblinkedly at Ron, flickering the end of his bushy tail. Then, without warning, he pounced. "Oi!" Ron roared, seizing his bag as Crookshanks sank 4 sets of claws deeply into it, and began tearing ferociously. "Get off, you stupid animal!" Ron tried to pull the bag away from Crookshanks, but Crookshanks clung on, spitting and slashing. "Ron, don't hurt him!" squealed Hermione. The whole common room was watching. Ron whirled the bag around, Crookshanks still clinging onto it, and Scabbers came flying out of the top. "Catch the cat!" Ron yelled. Here's the picture. As Crookshanks freed himself from the remnants of the bag, sprang over the table, and chased after the terrified Scabbers. George Weasley made a lunge for Crookshanks, but missed. Scabbers streaked through 20 pairs of legs and shot beneath an old chest of drawers. Crookshanks skidded to a halt, crouched low on his bandy legs, and started making furious swipes beneath the chest of drawers with his front paws. Ron and Hermione both hurried over. Hermione grabbed Crookshanks around the middle and heaved him away. Ron threw himself onto his stomach and with great difficulty pulled Scabbers out by the tail. "Look at him," he said furiously to Hermione, dangling Scabbers in front of her. "He's skin and bones. You keep that nasty cat away from him." "Crookshanks doesn't understand it's wrong," said Hermione, her voice shaking. All cats chase rats, Ron." "There was something funny about that animal," said Ron, who was trying to persuade a frantically wriggling Scabbers back into his pocket. "It heard me say that Scabbers was in my bag." "Oh, what rubbish," said Hermione impatiently. "Crookshanks could smell him, Ron. He's a cat. How else do you think? That cat's got it out for Scabbers," said Ron, ignoring the people around him, who were starting to giggle. "And Scabbers was here first. And he's ill." Ron marched through the common room and out of sight up the stairs to the boys' dormitories. And the next part starts the next day. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to drink a bunch of coffee. I got to get my day started. I will hopefully be sending another email out either today or tomorrow morning about a thing called Flipgrid, where maybe we can do check-ins with each other. I've got the instructions all written up. I just got to do a couple more test runs. It's kind of a thing that only our class can do, and so I think it would be a great way that everybody has a chance to interact and we can talk a little bit more, because we've still got minimum of 2 more weeks of this. So please be safe and have a great Friday. I hope that the sun pokes out a little bit so you guys can get some fresh air and some vitamin D, and I will talk to you soon.